The park was quiet that morning, with only the rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds breaking the silence. Samuel Hayes, a retired history professor, walked his usual route along the cobblestone paths. His cane tapped rhythmically against the stones, and a thermos of lukewarm coffee swung gently in his free hand. It was a routine he cherished, watching the world wake up, even as he felt himself slowing down with age. He paused at a bench near the pond, his favorite spot, and sat down with a groan. As he set his thermos on the bench, he noticed something lying in the grass nearby, a leather-bound diary, its cover worn and frayed. Curiosity got the better of him, and he reached over to pick it up. The diary was surprisingly heavy, the leather soft under his fingers. He opened it to the first page, where elegant handwriting sprawled across the yellowed paper. This is the story of Samuel Hayes. Samuel's heart skipped a beat. His name wasn't exactly common, and yet here it was, written in ink that looked decades old. He glanced around the park, expecting someone to emerge and claim it, but he was alone. Intrigued, Samuel flipped to the next page. The first entry was dated September 15, 1963, a date that instantly struck a chord. It was the day he'd won his first ever debate competition in high school. He read the entry with growing disbelief. Today, Samuel stood tall, defending his beliefs against the odds. Though his palms were sweaty and his voice trembled, his arguments swayed the room. Samuel sat back, his mind racing. The details were eerily accurate, down to the green tie he'd worn that day. How could this diary possibly contain such precise memories? Yeah. He turned to another entry, dated 10 years later. Samuel felt the weight of the decision as he signed the letter. He had loved her, but the distance was too great, and they both deserved the chance to move on. Perhaps one day they will meet again, wiser and more forgiving.
Sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me. But let's be real anxiety can
He turned to another entry dated 10 months ago. That was difficult, but he did it. He closed his eyes and felt her lips touched with his on his closed lips, as they had never been touched before. But how could this stranger know about it? As the hours passed, Samuel continued reading, flipping through pages that chronicled pivotal moments in his life. His first teaching job, his marriage, the birth of his daughter. Each event was recorded with uncanny accuracy and intimate detail. The most chilling part was the tone. The writer seemed to know not only what had happened, but also how Samuel had felt in those moments, his doubts, joys, and regrets. By the time Samuel reached the most recent entry, dated just a week ago, the sun had dipped low in the sky. The entry read, "Samuel will find this diary today, and with it, the chance to uncover the truth he's been searching for." Samuel closed the diary abruptly, his breathing uneven. He felt as though he were being watched, though the park was as empty as ever. What truth? What was he supposed to uncover? The last line of the entry offered a clue. Start with the initials on the back cover. Samuel flipped the diary over and squinted at the faint etching on the leather, E.L. Samuel's chest tightened. He hadn't thought about Eleanor Langston in years, but those initials could only belong to her. She had always signed her letters E.L. Had Eleanor written this? If so, how had she known so much about his life, things even he had forgotten until reading them in the diary? And why had it appeared now, decades after they'd parted ways? Gripping the diary tightly, Samuel stood. He needed answers. That evening, Samuel sat in his study, the diary open before him on the desk. His mind replayed memories of Eleanor, their long conversations, her infectious laugh, the way her hair caught the sunlight. He had loved her deeply, but life had pulled them in different directions. Among the diary's pages was a folded note tucked carefully between two entries. Samuel unfolded it, revealing a message written in the same elegant handwriting. "If you've found this, it means you're ready to know the truth. Meet me where it all began." Samuel's heart raced. There was only one place that could mean: the little cafe where he and Eleanor had shared their first date. Samuel placed the diary in his bag and grabbed his coat. The cafe was still there, though he hadn't visited in years. As he stepped out into the cool evening air, a mix of excitement and trepidation filled him. Was Eleanor waiting for him? Or would he find something else entirely? The diary had brought his past to life, but what it held for his future remained a mystery. The streets glistened under the dim glow of streetlights as Samuel Hayes walked through the familiar neighborhood. The diary was tucked securely under his arm, its weight a constant reminder of the mystery he was about to confront. It had been years since he'd visited the small cafe on Lexington Avenue, yet the route came back to him effortlessly. Every corner of the neighborhood seemed infused with echoes of the past, memories of his younger self, wide-eyed and full of ambition, walking these same streets with Eleanor Langston by his side. When the cafe finally came into view, Samuel's breath caught. The sign, though weathered, still bore the name Langston's Corner Cafe. It was no coincidence, he realized now, that Eleanor's family had owned the place. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. The interior had been updated over the years, but the cozy charm remained. A few patrons sat scattered at tables, their quiet conversations blending with the soft hum of jazz music. Samuel scanned the room, unsure of what or who he was looking for. "Mr. Hayes?" Samuel turned sharply to see a woman approaching. She was in her early 30s with short auburn hair and a warm smile. Though unfamiliar, there was something about her eyes that felt eerily familiar. "Yes," Samuel replied cautiously. "Do I know you?" The woman extended her hand. "My name is Clara. I've been waiting for you." Samuel stared at Clara, his mind racing. "Waiting for me? How do you know who I am?" Clara gestured to a table near the back. "Let's sit. I'll explain everything." Reluctantly, Samuel followed her and sat across the table. Clara placed a leather bag on the seat beside her, pulling out a thick envelope. "This might be a lot to take in," she began, her tone gentle. "But the diary you found, it was meant for you." Samuel frowned. "I figured that much out. What I don't understand is how it contains details about my life that no one else could possibly know." Clara nodded. "That's because the person who wrote it knew you better than anyone." "My mother? Eleanor Langston." Samuel's breath caught. "Eleanor is your mother?" Clara smiled faintly. "Yes. She passed away a few years ago, but before she did, she left the diary for me. She made me promise that when the time was right, I'd make sure it found its way to you." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't spoken to Eleanor in decades, and yet here was her daughter, delivering a part of her he never expected to find. "Why would she do that?" Samuel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara pushed the envelope toward him. "It's all in here. Letters she wrote to you but never sent, stories about your time together, and something she wanted you to have." Samuel hesitated before opening the envelope. Inside were neatly folded letters, their paper yellowed with age, and a photograph of Eleanor. She looked as he remembered, radiant, confident, and full of life. He unfolded the first letter and began to read. Dear Samuel, I've started this letter 100 times, but the words never come out right. There's so much I want to say, and yet I'm terrified of how you might react. I've carried a secret for years, one I should have shared long ago. Samuel's heart raced as he continued reading. The letter went on to describe Eleanor's deep regret over their separation, and a revelation that shook him to his core. Shortly after we parted ways, I found out I was pregnant. I wanted to tell you, but by the time I gathered the courage, it felt like too much time had passed. Our daughter, Clara, has grown into an incredible woman. She's the best parts of both of us. I hope that one day you'll get to know her. Samuel lowered the letter, his hands trembling. You're my daughter? He asked, his voice breaking. Clara nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yes. I've always known about you, but Mom said she wasn't ready for you to know about me. She thought it would complicate things. When she passed, she told me it was finally time to find you. Samuel leaned back in his chair, his mind swirling with emotion. He had always wondered what might have been if he and Eleanor had stayed together, but he'd never imagined their story had continued in this way. I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say anything right now, Clara replied gently. I know this is a lot to take in, but I wanted to meet you, to give you the chance to know me and to reconnect with the pieces of Mom she left behind. Over the next few hours, Clara shared stories about Eleanor's life after Samuel. She spoke of her mother's passion for writing, her dedication to raising Clara, and the way she had always spoken of Samuel with admiration and love. Samuel listened intently, feeling a mixture of guilt and gratitude. Guilt for the years he had missed, but gratitude for the special chances given to him. When the cafe began to close for the evening, Clara shared her stories about Eleanor and Samuel. Take this, she said. It belongs to you. Mom wanted you to have it. Samuel nodded, clutching the diary tightly. Thank you, Clara, for finding me, for everything, Clara smiled. It's not too late, you know, to be part of my life. Samuel's throat tightened. I'd like that, very much. As Samuel walked home that night, the diary felt heavier than before, not because of its physical weight, but because of the emotional journey it had taken him on. For so many years, he had thought his life was winding down, but now he realized it was just beginning a new chapter. Eleanor's memory, Clara's presence, and the words written in that diary had given him something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And with that hope came a promise. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Samuel Hayes. One step at a time. He spent hours poring over the diary, piecing together fragments of his past through Eleanor's words. Each entry painted a vivid picture of their time together, moments he had cherished, but never thought anyone else had remembered. But the diary was more than just a chronicle of their shared history. It was also a testament to Eleanor's life after him, her struggles, triumphs, and, most poignantly, her unwavering hope that Samuel and Clara would one day meet. With each passing day, Samuel's resolve grew stronger. He wanted to be part of Clara's life, not just as a distant figure from her mother's past, but as the father he never knew he could be. One evening, as Samuel prepared dinner in his modest kitchen, his phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Dad, would you like to come to dinner tomorrow night? I'd love for you to meet my family. Samuel stared at the message, his heart pounding. She had called him Dad. The word felt foreign, yet comforting, like an old song he hadn't heard in years but still knew by heart. He typed out a response, his hands trembling slightly. "I'd be honored. What time?" Her reply came quickly. 7 p.m. I'll text you the address. Looking forward to it." Samuel smiled, a mix of excitement and nervousness coursing through him. The following evening, Samuel found himself standing in front of Clara's home, a charming 2-story house with a well-kept garden. He clutched a bottle of wine in one hand and the diary in the other, unsure what to expect. The door opened before he could knock, and Clara greeted him with a warm smile. "Dad, come in. Everyone's excited to meet you." As Samuel stepped inside, he was met by the sounds of laughter and the delicious aroma of roasted chicken. Clara introduced him to her husband, David, a kind-looking man with a firm handshake, and their 2 children, Emma, 8, and Lucas, 6. "Grandpa Sam!" Emma exclaimed, running to hug him. Lucas followed, clutching a toy car in one hand. Samuel's eyes welled up as he knelt to hug them. "Grandpa Sam? I could get used to that." The dinner was a lively affair. Clara and David shared stories about their family, while Emma and Lucas peppered Samuel with questions about his favorite books, foods, and adventures. Samuel, in turn, shared tales from his time as a history professor, weaving in anecdotes about his travels and the students he had taught. Clara listened intently, her eyes shining with pride. As the evening wore on, Clara excused herself to fetch dessert. She returned carrying a box Samuel recognized instantly. It was Eleanor's keepsake box. "I thought you might want to see this," Clara said, placing it gently on the table. Samuel opened the box with reverence. Inside were photographs, letters, and small trinkets from Eleanor's life. He picked up a faded photo of the 2 of them from their college days, their smiles wide and carefree. "She kept everything," Samuel murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Among the keepsakes was a sealed envelope with Samuel's name on it. Clara gestured for him to open it, and he did so carefully, unfolding a letter written in Eleanor's familiar hand. "Dear Samuel, if you're reading this, it means Clara has found you, and my wish has come true. I've thought about you often over the years, not with regret but with gratitude for the love we shared and the life we built, even if only for a short time. Clara is the best part of me, and I believe the best part of you too. She is curious, kind, and fiercely determined. I hope you see in her what I've always seen in you: strength, compassion, and a heart full of love. Please don't let the time we've lost hold you back. The future is yours to shape together. With love always." Samuel folded the letter, tears streaming down his face. He looked at Clara, who reached across the table to take his hand. "She believed in us," Clara said softly, "and so do I." In the weeks that followed, Samuel became a regular presence in Clara's home. He helped Emma with her history homework, played catch with Lucas in the backyard, and even joined David for Sunday morning jogs. For the first time in years, Samuel felt a sense of belonging he hadn't realized he was missing. The ache of lost time with Eleanor was still there, but it was tempered by the joy of creating new memories with her family. Clara and Samuel also spent hours going through the diary together, laughing over old stories and marveling at Eleanor's knack for capturing life's little details. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on Clara's porch, Samuel turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he began, "your mother always wanted to write a book. She used to talk about it all the time but never got around to it." Clara nodded. "She mentioned that once. Why do you bring it up?" Samuel smiled, holding up the diary, because I think we should finish what she started, together. Clara's eyes lit up. You mean turn the diary into a book? Yes, Samuel said, not just for us, but for others. Her words deserve to be shared. Clara reached for his hand, her smile matching his. Let's do it, Dad. As Samuel walked home that evening, the weight of the diary felt lighter in his hands. It was no longer just a collection of memories. It was a bridge between the past and the future, a testament to love, resilience, and second chances. For the first time in years, Samuel felt truly at peace. Eleanor's voice, preserved in ink, had brought him back to life in more ways than one. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Samuel knew that the best chapters of his story were still to come. The decision to turn Eleanor's diary into a book transformed Samuel and Clara's lives. What began as a deeply personal journey between father and daughter soon grew into something much larger, a project that reconnected them not only with each other, but also with the broader world Eleanor had touched. Samuel found himself invigorated by the challenge. At 72, he hadn't expected to embark on a new career as a writer, but the thought of honoring Eleanor's memory gave him purpose. He spent his mornings drafting chapters and his afternoons sharing progress with Clara, who brought her own insights and creativity to the process. Clara proved to be a natural collaborator. Though she had little experience with writing, her memories of Eleanor were vivid and heartfelt. She contributed stories of her mother's quiet acts of kindness, baking pies for the neighbors, volunteering at the local library, and mentoring young writers who dreamed of seeing their names in print. She always believed in nurturing people's potential, Clara said one evening as they worked in Samuel's study. Samuel nodded. She had a way of seeing the best in everyone, even me when I couldn't see it myself. Clara placed a hand on his arm. You're more like her than you realize, Dad. Her words filled Samuel with a quiet pride. As the months passed, the book began to take shape. Samuel and Clara titled it Echoes of Eleanor, a tribute to the impact her life had on those around her. The narrative was part memoir, part love story, and part reflection on the enduring bonds between people separated by time and circumstance. The project brought unexpected surprises. Samuel discovered forgotten letters and photographs tucked between the pages of the diary, each one adding depth to Eleanor's story. Clara uncovered an old recording of Eleanor reading a passage from her favorite novel, her voice clear and melodic. It's like she's guiding us, Clara said one evening as they listened to the recording. Samuel smiled. I've got such a weird feeling about this, he said, finally looking up at his wife. When the manuscript was complete, Clara suggested they share it with a literary agent. Samuel was hesitant at first, worried that something so personal might not resonate with a wider audience. But the agent's response was enthusiastic. This story is universal, she said during their first meeting. It's about love, loss, and finding connection. People will see themselves in these pages. Samuel and Clara agreed to move forward, and within weeks, a publisher had signed on to release Echoes of Eleanor. The book's release was met with an outpouring of support. Readers praised its heartfelt storytelling and the way it captured Eleanor's spirit. Many wrote letters to Samuel and Clara, sharing how the book had inspired them to reconnect with loved ones or pursue long-neglected dreams. This book is more than just a tribute to Eleanor, his heart said. It's a reminder that even the smallest acts of love can leave echoes that last a lifetime. I hope her story inspires you to create your own echoes. The audience erupted into applause, and Samuel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. In the years that followed, Samuel's relationship with Clara and her family blossomed. He became a fixture in their lives, attending school plays, family dinners, and birthday parties. Emma and Lucas adored him, often begging him to tell them stories from his youth. One summer afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Emma asked, "Grandpa, are you going to write another book?" Samuel chuckled. "Maybe, but for now I'm enjoying spending time with all of you." Lucas looked up from his drawing. "You should write about us." Samuel smiled, his heart swelling. "You know, that's not a bad idea." As Samuel reflected on the journey that had brought him here, he often marveled at how a single, forgotten diary had changed his life. It had reunited him with a daughter he never knew, brought him closer to Eleanor's memory, and reminded him that even in the later chapters of life, new beginnings were always possible. On a crisp autumn morning, Samuel returned to Langston's Corner Cafe, and run by Claire and David, he sat at his favorite table, sipping coffee and watching the world pass by. The diary sat beside him, a constant companion and a symbol of the love that had shaped his life. As the leaves fell gently outside, Samuel felt a profound sense of peace. His story, like Eleanor's, was far from over, and he couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring.